Okay, everybody, we're gonna chat for 20 minutes as friends. And we're gonna disagree a lot. And I'm gonna do this with two British guys, okay? Joining me is Simon and David. Guys, please come up. Okay, so these guys have been thinking about nation branding for the last 30 years, okay? You have David here from Brand Finance, like Index. This guy basically looks at the valuation of brands and basically measures it. So he's the guy that tells you the Amazon brand is worth $600 billion or $60 billion, something like that.
Something like that.
Okay, can you please introduce yourself in like a sentence or two?
Okay, I'm David Haigh. I am a chartered accountant. I trained in England, and I've spent most of my career working in marketing, finance. And for the last 27 years, I've run Brand Finance, which bridges the gap between marketing and finance. So I'm a very straightforward kind of guy. If you want brands measured, that's me.
That's him. Then we have Simon. Simon comes from the Good Country Index. Simon has worked with like 50, 60 countries to determine what's a good country and what's a bad country. Tell us about you.
Apparently, I'm the world's leading authority on country image, okay? Or at least this is what a nice journalist said when I paid him to say it. It's easy to be the world's leading authority on a subject. Let me give you some advice on this. You just invent a subject that nobody else would be stupid enough to be an expert in, and you are immediately the world's leading expert. So that's what I do.
Very cool. So guys, today we're gonna talk about a very simple subject, okay? We're gonna build a country together, and we're gonna tell the world about our country. You guys specialize in country building, right? So the whole point of today's topic is soft power for countries, for governments, for nations. Let's build a country together. How can I build a country that everybody knows about and talks about?
Do you want to start, Simon?
It's funny, actually, that you should ask that, because I did start a country once.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it called?
It was called The Good Country, and I launched it in 2018.
Really?
Because I'd done a calculation and I'd discovered that there were 760 million people around the world who would want to be citizens of it.
Okay. How's that going?
It was a pilot project which we terminated because there was too much interest. We had too many people wanting to become citizens and we ran out of passports.
Okay.
It was virtual. We didn't have land. It was.
So you actually tried to start a country?
Yeah.
So what's the process?
God, I can't even remember. It makes me exhausted just thinking about it. Basically, you need to find a reason to exist. That's the first thing. Why would anybody want a new country? And this research showed us that about 14% of the world's population are what I call natural cosmopolitans. They're people who say, I'm a human being first, and I'm French or Saudi or Guatemalan second, okay? And I just thought to myself, those people, they're not racists, they're not bigoted, they worry about climate change, they're not interested in domestic politics, they need a country of their own because their own country isn't serving them properly. So let's create a virtual country that they can be citizens of, alongside their existing one.
Got it. Okay, so David, go ahead.
Well, someone once said that if you build a better mousetrap, people will beat a path to your door, implying that if you just do something that's better, everyone will come and look for you. Now, if you think about nation branding, there have been quite a lot of nations that have built themselves in the last 50 years. For example, Singapore, which was nothing, but is now something. And the UAE is another example of a country that's basically built itself and built itself very well. But I don't adhere to the fact that people will just come and find you. I think it is all about the quality of your communication. And one of the central things of this session, I think, is to say, what can you do to turbocharge the way in which people know about you?
Yeah, because I think Simon says, so we're talking about media and marketing. How do I market my country? But then you say, yes, you have to market your country. You have to go out there and go on TikTok and magazines and TVs. And you're saying, just build the country and people will come.
I have a huge problem with this.
Please, go ahead.
The world is not a supermarket, and countries are not products, right?
Yeah, they are.
No, they're not. Because you're not selling anything. I can't have the UAE, even if I want to buy it. It's not for sale. Tourism, that's a different matter, okay? And so all of this idea that you have to market your product to people is based on the idea that you're selling them something, but you're not selling them something. What countries are actually doing when they do so-called nation branding is propaganda.
Propaganda is good. It doesn't have to be bad.
Propaganda is pointless because nobody's paying any attention. Don't you get it? There are 205 countries on this planet. Nobody cares about them. The majority of people care a little bit about their own country, not much, unless it's very contested. They occasionally think about the USA because it's kind of there. The other 203, they just couldn't care less whether they were there or not. And so the UAE or any other country could spend 10 times its GDP sending out messages saying, we're wonderful, we're wonderful, we're wonderful. And nobody would pay any attention at all because they're not interested in your country. Wow. And if you go on long enough telling everybody how fantastically lucky and successful and wonderful you are, they'll end up getting really pissed off because they'll say, why isn't my country that good?
Okay, do you want to disagree or should I disagree?
Obviously, I entirely disagree with that view. 100%. The reason that I disagree is that countries all have objectives in what they're trying to achieve in the world, and it's usually for the betterment of their citizens, economically and in other ways. And, they do run themselves in a way to prioritize the things they want, and they target audiences that they want, whether it be a business audience or a tourism audience or whatever. You therefore have to communicate with them. That is not...
Got a point.
You can call it propaganda, you can call it information. I prefer to call it information.
Okay, but we're talking about two entirely different things here. What David is talking about is sectoral promotion. He's talking about foreign direct investment promotion, yes, trade promotion, cultural relations. He's talking about tourism. I don't have an issue with using marketing to sell those products. Why you would want to give it a fancy name like nation branding, I have no idea. But when you're selling something to people, of course you have to market it. But most of what goes by the name of nation branding is not selling things. You're not saying to people, buy this, it's good. You're saying, you will change your mind about my country, and everybody knows what that is. It's propaganda from a foreign state.
But Simon, 1 second. Propaganda is not a bad word. Hollywood is propaganda, and Italian food is a form of propaganda for Italy.
Did I say it was a bad word?
What?
Did I say it was a bad word?
No, but you said it doesn't work. Propaganda actually works. Raise your hand if you watched a Hollywood production in the last year. Everybody has. Everybody loves Los Angeles because of Hollywood. That is propaganda. That is effective. It makes us all want to immigrate to America.
Because it's a product. It's entertainment. Of course it's effective. And there's propaganda within it. But nation branding campaigns are just pure propaganda. There's no content or relevance to the audience.
I spent, 10 years running a PR firm as part of the Publicist Group. And I remember more or less on the first day I went there, the guy that I was working with said, what we do is we accentuate the positive and we minimize the negative. That's our job.
Let's repeat that. Accentuate the positive and minimize the negative.
That's our job.
What does accentuate mean?
Increase.
Make bigger. And minimize the negative.
So your job is to actually talk about the things that are good. Now, clearly in the background, you have to be making them better. But you try and focus on the things that are good about your country, and then people will come to you. Now, the reason that nation branding...
You're talking tourism again?
They come to you in various different ways. But, for example, you mentioned Italian food. Italian food adds a premium, and we work for the Italian Trade Agency, actually. They reckon that 2/3 of all food sold as Italian in the world has never been to Italy. It's come from somewhere else, but they get a premium for it. In England, we had various electronics brands that they gave Japanese names to so that they could sell more of them. And there are many, many things like that in, for example, the German car industry. Now, every country has the ability to put itself forward, and that is nation branding, in my opinion.
Yeah. Simon, you disagree again?
Shall we go home now? Because we're just not listening to each other at all.
Okay, so what you're saying is, when you have nothing to sell, like, for example, you can promote tourism in a specific country. You can promote investments in real estate in Dubai.
You can sell German cars or Italian cuisine.
Okay, but you cannot sell Dubai as Dubai.
You can't use the same tools that we use for selling products to change the image or to enhance the image of your country.
I really don't agree with that at all.
But there's a term that says... But there's a term that says, fake it till you make it. So you
But nobody's paying attention, nobody cares.
Well, let me give you an example from the UK.
Don't interrupt.
That's British dry humor.
Enhance the positives and whatever it was about the negatives. So why would you care about the positives of Uruguay or Kiribati or the Central African Republic?
Okay, the number one reason why someone would care is tourism. That's how everything starts as tourism. But I
don't have a problem with tourism. Tourism is simple. Tourism is an idiot business. The more money you spend on promotion, the more people will come to your country. It's not an issue. We're not discussing that. What we're discussing here is the attempt to change people's perceptions of your country, its governance, its systems, what it stands for, and nobody's interested in that because there are too many damn countries.
Okay, first of all, there are not too many damn countries. There's only 195.
205 last time I checked.
Well, depends on what's a country and what's not. So one, I don't think we have 20,000 countries that we get lost in the thing. Second of all, you said it yourself. So many people want to change their country. Specifically, 760 million people, you said, want to change their country.
No, I didn't say they wanted to change their country.
They don't have an affinity to their country. So that sounds like an opportunity to stand out because there's a lot of demand.
That's another piece of sectoral promotion. If you're searching for talent, okay, and you want to draw people to your country, yeah, absolutely, communications are a good way of doing that. Do you see the distinction I'm making? Let me try and be a bit more constructive here because this is turning into a comedy thing. I've researched the images of countries for 25 years, and I've collected an enormous amount of data about why people admire certain countries and why they don't. And what I've discovered, to my surprise, is that the primary driver of a good country image has got nothing whatsoever to do with how much self-promotion the country does. The main reason why people admire a certain country is because they believe it does good in the world. In other words, they feel glad that it exists, right? So the reason I like Guatemala is not because I know anything about their landscape or their people or the training shoes they sell. It's because I know that Guatemala cares about climate change. I care about climate change. When I go to bed at night, I say to myself, I'm glad that Guatemala exists because it makes the world a better place. Ergo, therefore, if a country wants to improve its image, there's only one thing that's going to work, and that's not wasting taxpayers' money on marketing campaigns. That is doing things that prove over a long period of time that you're good news, that you're a responsible member of the international community. It's like corporate social responsibility at the level of nation states, and it's the only thing that works. And it's free.
Why I obviously, let's not say I disagree. Let's say I would
think of something new.
Amend that. In that, obviously, you have to do things which make you a more desirable and better country, clearly. But that doesn't mean that everyone knows about you, because not everyone is like you, Simon, studying the 200 countries in the world to see what their differences are.
But that was exactly my point before.
No, listen, you said...
If you do something that's
let me speak,
relevant to people.
Simon, you said let me speak. Right. So not everyone knows what Uruguay is like, but might want to know. They don't know actually.
If you
many people don't actually even know
about it.
Most people don't actually know much about the UAE. In fact, they know very little about the UAE. And in case we run out of time, one of the critical things that I've been thinking about the last couple of days, and I was asked to answer the question of whether or not countries should set up their own national broadcasters and use it for propaganda, in quotes. The answer is yes, they definitely should, and most major countries do, and Britain was the first one to do so by setting up the BBC. The BBC is no more than a propaganda device for the UK as a country, and it always has been. It has always been controversial, and it always puts our point of view across. And after 100 years, it has persuaded people that we are the most, I think, generally speaking, that we are pretty good people. We've got a nice country called the Great Country. The BBC has been a massive thing for that. We do a valuation of media brands, and we've put a value of $4 billion on the BBC brand itself. It generates $5 billion of revenue for the UK country, and it also puts our message across in every single way. And the point that I wanted to make is, I am amazed that the UAE has not tried to replicate that. Because in every other field of activity, the UAE tries to be the best. The tallest building, the best ports, the best airline, even the best football clubs, you buy them up in the UK. I think you should be creating a much more robust national broadcasting function, which obviously goes on into digital. It's not just conventional media, it's all forms of media. It's films, it's news, it's documentaries, it's all sorts of things, and that will persuade people about many things to do with the UAE. First of all, what you're doing, but also what a great country you are, whereas at the moment they don't really know.
So that is a great segue to the next topic of conversation. We can disagree whether you need marketing or not, but let's say we agree that we need to build our own version of the BBC. The question is...
I don't agree with that.
Well, you're going to have to agree because that's what we're going to talk about.
Nobody asked me.
So how does the BBC of the future look like? The BBC 100 years ago started with a radio. But if you start a radio now for the Emirates, ain't nobody gonna listen. So what does the BBC of the future look like? Simon, you can have an opinion on this.
Digital, blah, blah, blah.
Simon, do you like digital?
What do you mean, do I like digital?
Like,
Do I breathe oxygen? I mean, it's the world we live in.
Okay, so another question.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
I mean, I think the point about, if you look at the BBC's history, every new medium they have leapt into. So they leapt into radio, then they leapt into TV, they leapt into podcasts, they're very into social media, although they control the way that it's done, much less so than, or much more so than, say, you or other social influencers would. With you, it's a lot more free, but they are still using the medium. They will go on adopting all those media because they are a media outlet to promote certain information. They reckon that their purpose is to inform, educate, and entertain. And in doing so, they try and persuade everyone that we are wonderful people and that English is the best language, and on and on. I see no reason why you guys should not do that for the UAE.
How do we do that? Because there's a lot of money going into media today with new channels started every second day there's a new channel, but for some reason it's not getting as big as BBC. What is the problem?
So one of the things that I found myself thinking over and over again watching the previous two panels when the discussion was basically quite similar, we're failing to distinguish between content and medium, right? And people are constantly asking the question about the medium. Which is the right medium to be on? Is it television? Is it whatever?
Yeah.
I don't think that what really distinguishes those different channels is the channel that they use. It's the quality of the content. So will television survive? Yes, television will survive as producers of a specific kind of content for which there may always be a demand. Longer form content, highly produced, as some of the other panelists were saying. Its channel for reaching the audience, which is a box in the corner of the room, will not survive. That's almost certain. Radio, for example, survives. It wasn't killed by television, but because there's a kind of content there for which there is a fairly lasting demand. So I think we have to always be quite rigorous about separating what are we talking about here. Content is king, as somebody once said. And so to try and answer the question, what would the UAE need to do if it wanted its own platform? Remember that the purpose of this, the way to get an audience, is to produce the content that people want at the quality that amazes them, and not use the space to brag about how wonderful you think you are.
So,
yes,
it is about content, but if you can't control how the content is distributed, have no influence over the way the content is created, you don't control the message. And I think you want to be controlling the message as far as you possibly can and get as much exposure for the things you want as you can. So yes, one thing is that in the old days, you might have one little box in the corner or a radio. Now there are multifarious means of getting messages. You're in a hotel room, there's a screen there, that's not going to change. You're in a plane, there's a screen. You've got a phone. There are many, many, many ways. But it's going to be coming at you. And I think the UAE needs to leap in and invest heavily to become a major player in the media space. And you are uniquely positioned to do it, in my opinion. Your GDP is about 500 billion. The BBC's turnover is 5 billion. That's 1% of your GDP. And our investment actually makes profit. So not only do you get your message out, you also make a profit.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you do it?
Well, yes, we will do it. But I think sometimes, so the message, we agree that the message has to be good. But I think what we disagree on is the packaging of the message. Because if you use the packaging that's correct, you get billions of exposure. If you use the wrong packaging, you get literally no exposure. For example, we all agree, let's say the UAE has a nuclear power plant. Great. 25% of the UAE's electricity will come from nuclear. Great. Now, that is a good content and a good message we all agree on. But how do we actually tell the world about it? Traditional media would go make a TV show about it. Non-traditional media would make a tweet about it. Others would make a book about it. You have a book. Can you show them your book? You have a book. Now, you could distribute a message via a book, but who's going to read the book? Not many people. So I think the packaging of the messaging is where we disagree on.
You're making that up. We're not disagreeing on that at all. You haven't given me a chance to answer yet. You just assumed I was going to disagree with you.
I assume we disagree.
No, of course I agree with that. because as I said before, content is king. And I get countries ringing me up the whole time and basically saying, what can we say to make ourselves famous? And I always say, this is the wrong question. The right question is, what can I do to make myself relevant? If you're relevant, then people are much more likely to be interested in your content and to become hooked on it. We have a saying in English, and I believe the same saying exists in Arabic, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? And so there's an awful lot of content out there. My God, is there a lot of content. And just imagining that you can force people to pay attention and consume that content because you've got a whole load of money, well, it doesn't really work that way, as we know. It's got to be relevant to people's needs, their desires, their fears, their aspirations, their existence.
Got it. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. I am dying to change the topic just a little bit and get your opinions on the newest form of content, which is in the form of TikToks. What are both of your opinions on this platform that has 1 billion daily active consumers of media?
It's cute.
And that's the problem, because you say it's cute. I say it's revolutionary. There's a big difference between the two.
Justify
why do you think it's cute?
Why do you think it's revolutionary?
Because you have 1 billion humans looking at you.
That fact is indeed remarkable.
So why do you say it's cute?
It's also cute. The reason why 1 billion humans watch it is because it's cute, and people like cute stuff.
David, you also think it's cute?
I've never watched it, to be frank, except when I was researching you. I thought, oh my, I'm not going to watch that. It's rather dull. But I know I'm not a 16-year-old and I don't like dancing. So, why would I watch TikTok?
Guys, I feel I swear to God, I feel like we're sitting on the Titanic and the iceberg is right there.
Yeah, well, you've got 2 middle-aged or old white men here, so don't be surprised. But no, the point about TikTok and all of the social media is that you have now got very short but very powerful media for getting messages across. Whether it's something about a perfume or a dance routine, or it could be a political message, it could be anything. Yes, it's a very powerful mechanism, there is no doubt. And in our table of the most valuable brands, the social media brands are all at the very top. They are the ones that are commanding people's eyeballs. I think the point is, though, that any sensible country has a mixture of things that they are using to get their message across, from 1-hour documentaries on TV to media in the print medium to TikTok and other social media. So I did notice actually yesterday in the Times, they had a thing. There is now this category of people who are called de-influencers. Have you heard of them? Apparently, they go around looking for people like you who get paid to do an influential media post, yes, which they know is being funded by a brand.
Yes.
And so they go on and try and undermine the message because they think it's unreasonable that a social influencer should be getting paid. So it's sort of guerrilla marketing against the paid-for influencers, which I think is an extremely interesting concept.
Do you agree with it?
Well, I neither agree nor disagree. I mean, everyone's got their point of view. The whole point about all this, and actually this is where I do actually think the UAE is in a good position, because there was a woman this morning, Gorgieva from the IMF, and she was saying countries are successful where they've got education, infrastructure, and rule of law. And, the UAE seems to me to be pretty well placed.
Yeah, but Denmark has the same 3 things, and nobody cares about Denmark.
Yeah, but Denmark,
building the product
Denmark doesn't have the money the UAE has got. It doesn't have the ability. Well, Denmark is a very powerful country behind the scenes.
Go ahead, Norway. Norway has the money, but nobody's visiting Norway, talking about Norway left and right.
Yeah, but 185 countries don't want to go and live in Norway, but they do want to come and live here because it's a nicer place to live and there's more going on and there are low taxes. I mean, you've got the wherewithal to make this a real media center, in my opinion, a real media center.
Yes. Guys, we're running out of time. Any famous last words? Simon, make a last impression.
Oh, God. This was the most frustrating conversation I've ever had. Thank you.
Likewise, likewise.
Simon is one of my greatest heroes.
Was that good enough?
And you, of course.
Oh, that's literally your statement.
That's it.
I think Simon and I could not disagree more. David?
That was my TikTok moment.
What's your famous last words?
I urge the UAE to do what I've said. Spend far more money putting its message across. I mean, for example, before I came out here, don't be insulted, someone said to me, oh, you're going to Dubai? Yes, I am. Oh, that's the capital of Abu Dhabi, isn't it? And I said, no, it's not. And I tried to explain it all. People just don't know enough. And on the plane out here, I watched a film called Fisherman's Friends, which is about some fishermen guys who become a group and sing in Cornwall. It is a very, very emotional, heartwarming thing that makes you really love Cornwall. How many of those kind of messages are coming out about places like here? Do people really understand it with their hearts and their minds? No. You need to get that across, and I think you've got the wherewithal to be able to do that.
Thank you so much, guys. We're out of time. Thank you, everybody.